A mysterious voiceover introduces a social media influencer who has it all but loses his mind over a girl who doesn't care about fame or followers. They say everything lives online now: love, hate, truth, lies. But I never bought into it. Not really. My name is Era. I don't dance on TikTok. I don't have a brand aesthetic. I don't care about likes, followers, hashtags, or going viral. I live offline, quietly, intentionally, while the rest of the world chases validation in heart-shaped buttons and swipe-ups. I chase solitude, but fate has a strange sense of humor, because the one person who shook my quiet world to its core was the loudest voice on the internet. Let me take you back to how it started. It was raining that night. The kind of soft, endless drizzle that taps on your window like it's trying to whisper secrets. I had the window cracked open, letting in that chilly, earthy smell of wet pavement. My room was dark, save for the warm glow of my laptop screen. That was when I wrote that blog post, 10 Reasons Why Influencers Are Ruining Everything by Theo Flynn. It wasn't even meant to be read by anyone. My blog barely had 7 subscribers. Most of them were old classmates who forgot to unsubscribe. But that night, I was fed up. I had just watched a video of some social media celebrity fake crying while holding up a tissue, apologizing because he got caught saying something awful, and the comments full of people forgiving him like he was some kind of victim. So I snapped. I typed until my fingers ached. Influencers aren't real. They sell fantasy, filtered life, filtered faces, filtered everything. Real life isn't product placements and Bali sunsets. It's dirty socks and grocery bills and days where your face is too tired to smile. I didn't name names, but I didn't have to. The post went live at 2:03 a.m. and somehow it spread like wildfire. When I woke up the next morning, my blog had 21,000 views. 21,000. That's more people than my entire district. My inbox flooded. Some people agreed. Some hated me. Some called me brave. Others called me bitter. One influencer with perfect teeth and a suspiciously smooth forehead DM'd me to say I sounded jealous. But one message stood out. A private comment on the blog itself, left by someone calling themselves Jupiter Wave. Maybe the world needs more people like you. Someone who's not performing. You ever think influencers know it's fake but can't stop? I didn't reply. I didn't trust it. But I didn't delete it either. That night, I got another message from Jupiter Wave. Shorter this time, still raining where you are. Creepy. But oddly poetic. My curiosity got the better of me. So I replied, yeah. Why? You are weather stalker. And just like that, the conversation began. At first, we messaged anonymously. I didn't know who he was, where he lived, or what he did. He said he liked rainy nights and disliked crowds. He said his life was loud, but his head was louder. I told him I liked silence because the world was too noisy. He never pushed, never asked for my face, name or socials. We talked about stupid things, like how the moon looked lonelier when it was full, how coffee always tasted better when shared, how it was scary, how people now performed happiness instead of living it. His messages made me feel seen, and for the first time, I wanted to be known. Just not by the world, just by him. Weeks passed. We messaged daily. Every morning, I'd wake up to a short "you're alive." Every night, he'd say, "same moon. Sleep easy." He never used emojis, never typed in all caps, never said lol. And yet, I laughed more during those weeks than I had all year. Then one day, I asked him, "What do you do when you're not being mysterious?" There was a long pause, longer than usual. Finally, he replied, "I make noise for a living." That made me laugh. "So, you're a drummer, a politician, a toddler?" He didn't answer that night. Instead, he disappeared for 3 days. On the 4th day, he came back. "Sorry, needed quiet." I didn't press. I knew better than anyone how sometimes silence was survival. But then something changed. People started messaging me again, this time, not about my blog. They sent me a link. It was a clip from a live stream. A very famous influencer, Kao Tanaka, the golden boy of Asia's social scene, was crying on camera. Again. But this time, he wasn't apologizing. He was talking about silence, about losing someone who made him feel real, about wanting to quit the stage and go offline. And then he read a paragraph from my blog, word for word. I froze. No way. It couldn't be. But it was. Kao Tanaka was Jupiter Wave, the same guy with 14.3 million followers. The same guy I made fun of in my blog post. The same guy who made me laugh every night for 3 weeks. The guy I had started to fall for. I didn't message him back. Instead, I ghosted him. I deleted the blog, blocked the chat ID, changed my email. Then I packed my bags, turned off my phone, and took the earliest bus to the only place I knew the internet wouldn't follow. An artist's retreat in the mountains. No cell towers. No Wi-Fi. Just colors, air and quiet. But fate doesn't need a signal. The mountain air hit differently. Not just in the fresh and clean kind of way, but in the silent way. The kind that makes you realize how loud the rest of your life has been. No buzzing phones. No screens glowing in the dark. No curated content, catchy jingles, or algorithmically served ads. Just the sound of wind brushing through pine trees. And my heartbeat still rattled. I arrived at the retreat late afternoon. A converted wood lodge nestled between cloud-covered ridges. The place was rustic but beautiful, like something out of a dream I didn't know I'd had. There were about 20 of us. Artists, writers, loners like me, all of us there to disconnect from noise and reconnect with something, anything. I signed in under a fake name. No photos allowed. Phones turned in at the door. They locked them away like precious vices. It felt good, freeing, but also terrifying, because now there was no way for Kai or anyone else to find me. Which is exactly what I wanted. Right, the days pass like slow watercolor paintings. Morning, mist over the valley, breakfast in silence. Afternoon, sketching in the woods or listening to the creek. Evening, soft group dinners, no small talk unless you wanted to. Night, fireside journaling or early sleep. I started painting again. Nothing fancy, just little moments. Trees, cups of tea, glimpses of faces, including one I couldn't forget, him. I tried to bury it, tried to convince myself that our connection was just timing, novelty, a trick of distance. But every time I dipped my brush into the paint, his words whispered through me. Same moon. Sleep easy. I hated how much I missed him. And I hated that I still didn't know what to feel, because the man I fell for was quiet, thoughtful, sincere. But the man the world knew was loud, curated, untouchable. Which one was real? Was it even possible for both to be true? One afternoon, I was sitting by the lake, sketching an old canoe half submerged in water, when someone sat down beside me, still painting rainy things. My breath caught. I turned slowly, and there he was. Not through a screen, not in a video, Not a meme or a filtered selfie, but real. Tired, unshaven, eyes rimmed with dark circles and something else relief. Kyo Tanaka, Jupiter wave, viral star. The boy I ghosted, and somehow, impossibly, he had found me. I turned over every rock, he said quietly. Used a friend to trace the bus records. Checked every off-grid retreat in the northern region. You'd be surprised how many people run away to silence. I didn't say a word. My throat had closed up. He looked at my notebook. You draw like you think too much. I do everything like I think too much, I muttered. He smiled. It was small, gentle, no teeth, no cameras, just him. May I sit here? I nodded and then silence, but not the uncomfortable kind, the kind that makes your lungs remember how to breathe. Eventually, I asked the only question I could. Why? He looked out over the lake. His voice was rough, like he hadn't spoken in days. I don't know when it stopped feeling real. The fame, the fans, the content. I was just performing, until your post. I blinked. You mean the one where I called people like you shallow parasites? He chuckled. That one, yeah. You weren't even named. I didn't need to be. I read your words and felt like someone finally saw behind the curtain. I stayed quiet. He continued. At first, I wanted to argue. I was angry, then curious, then addicted to how real you were, how unfiltered. You made me feel like me again, not the version of me everyone else expects. A gust of wind sent ripples across the lake. You should be angry, he added. I lied. I hid. I acted like someone else. I looked at him. No, I said. You acted like yourself. Then you revealed who you were. That's what scared me. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out. A small leather-bound notebook. He opened it to a random page. Scribbled words, quotes, doodles. Every night you didn't reply, he whispered. I wrote something in here, just in case I ever found you. My fingers tingled. I didn't ask to read it, not yet. He placed it beside me and stood up. I'll be around, he said. I'm not here to make you feel guilty or rush you into anything. He smiled, softer. Now, I just needed to be where you were. Then he walked away, hands in his pockets, as quietly as he came. The rest of the day was a blur. Everyone at the retreat eventually noticed him. Some whispered, a few stared. One or two tried to get a selfie until the retreat staff reminded them. No phones, no photos, no fame. And to his credit, Koo didn't complain, he just blended. Which was strange, really. Seeing someone who lived so loudly become so silent. But maybe that's what he wanted. To just be. Later that night, I sat in my room, lights off, reading his notebook under the covers, like a teenage girl with a forbidden diary. The entries were raw, honest. Today I heard her laugh through text. How is that possible? What if I'm only real when she's talking to me? I told my manager I'm quitting after this year. He thinks I'm joking. I'm not. I'm scared that she'll hate the real me. But I'm more scared she won't give me a chance. I cried, quietly, not because I was sad, but because I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't a lie. The next morning, I found him by the campfire pit, sipping from a chipped mug of tea. He looked up. Good morning. I sat beside him. No more secrets, I said. He nodded. We stared at the fire pit, unlit, but still full of potential. I never wanted someone famous, I said. I wanted someone real, someone whose silence didn't feel like absence. He turned to me, eyes soft. Then let me show you who I am when the camera's off. And so, for the next 2 weeks, we lived quietly. We painted, read books, and took long walks in the mist. We didn't talk about his followers, or my blog, or the chaos waiting outside, just us. The trees, the creaking of old wood, the way our hands brushed during shared moments. One night, he played me a song on an old guitar, off key, a little shy, barely a full melody, but it was perfect. Did you write that? I asked. He looked sheepish. Started it after your blog went viral. Finished it yesterday. What's it called? He shrugged. Same moon. My heart broke open. I kissed him that night, not because it was romantic, not because it was dramatic, but because it was true. And in that moment, the world outside no longer existed. Only us, offline, together. The thing about falling in love slowly is that you don't realize it's happening until you're already deep knees, chest, heart, and all. By the time I realized I had fallen for him, not the idea of him, not the version behind a username, but him. We were already sharing coffee every morning like we'd been doing it forever. He'd meet me at the mess hall table, hair messy from sleep, eyes still soft from dreams. Sometimes he'd bring me a flower he picked on the way there. Sometimes he'd bring silence. Both felt sacred. We didn't talk about the future. We didn't talk about the internet. We just talked about things that didn't require likes. Like favorite smells. Or the sound a fox makes when it laughs. Yes, apparently, foxes can laugh. Or what kind of soup matched your mood? That's how our days went. A beautiful blur of slow, human moments. One evening, the retreat held a bonfire for the artists to share their work. There was no stage, just an open fire, people sitting cross-legged in the grass, wrapped in wool blankets, passing around mugs of hot cider. I wasn't planning to share anything. Most people weren't. But Ko stood up. He looked nervous, really nervous. His hands trembled as he held his old guitar, eyes darting across the faces that were suddenly focused on him, not as fans, not as followers, but as people. He strummed the first note. Then his eyes met mine. He didn't blink. He played "It" was the song he'd written. Same moon, and when he sang it under the firelight, something shifted in the air. It wasn't perfect. It cracked in places. But it was real. Every word was full of meaning, little references only I understood. Lines like, "She spoke storms into my sunshine and taught me the rain doesn't ruin you, it just reveals what you're made of. I used to be a mirror, now I want to be a window, so she can look through and see what's true." It was raw, vulnerable, and I felt every person in that circle fall just a little bit in love with the man I already adored. When the song ended, no one clapped. Not because they didn't want to, but because the silence after was more profound than noise. He bowed his head and walked back to me. "Too much," he whispered. Cheeks flushed. I reached for his hand. Just enough. After the fire died down and the crowd thinned, we sat on the damp grass, watching embers glow and fade into the night. "I never imagined this," he said softly. "This?" I asked. He gestured around. "Being here, playing a song that wasn't written for the masses, holding your hand and not needing a reason to post it. Just living." I leaned my head against his shoulder. "You could have this always," I said, "if you chose it." He sighed. "But what happens when the world starts asking questions? When managers call, contracts come knocking, fans demand explanations?" I looked up at him. "Then you answer with the truth." He chuckled bitterly. "Truth doesn't trend, but maybe it heals." We stayed like that for hours, just talking, just being. The moon above us, silent and steady, like it always had been. The next morning, things changed, not between us, but around us. The peace we had built cracked. A car rolled up the gravel path, tires crunching. Unmarked, but suspiciously sleek. A man stepped out, clean suit, Bluetooth headset, city energy. KIO stiffened beside me. Manager, he muttered. Liam. Liam's eyes scanned the group before locking on us. He didn't smile. Instead, he marched toward KIO like a soldier about to retrieve a missing soldier. There you are, he said curtly. Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused? KIO stood slowly. I told you I needed space. You vanished. The agency is panicking. Your face is on buses and screens in 6 countries, and you are finding your inner zen. KIO didn't respond. Liam turned to me, and you must be the reason. I opened my mouth, but KIO stepped in front of me. She's not the problem. I was gone long before I left the city. Liam scoffed. Look, I get it. Rebellious phase. Mystery girl. Poetic healing. But the fans are restless. Your next brand deal is waiting. You can't throw it all away for this. I watched KIO inhale slowly. Then he said, I already have. The retreat staff came over to break the tension. But it didn't matter. The moment had already shattered the peace. People whispered. Some recognized him now. The mystery was unraveling. The next day, 2 people checked out early. Then 3 more. Then a local blogger posted a blurry photo of someone who looks like KIO Tanaka. The floodgates cracked. It was only a matter of time before they broke. We stood on the cliff's edge, where the trees opened up to reveal the sky. He was quiet, hands in pockets. They'll come, won't they? I asked. He nodded. They always do. Then what will you do? He looked at me, eyes tired but clear. I'll do the scariest thing I've ever done, which is, he exhaled, I'll stop being everyone's idea of me and just be mine. Later that evening, he did something I didn't expect. He asked the retreat coordinator if he could make an announcement. The group gathered in the common room, confused and curious. He stood by the fireplace, hands shaking slightly. I know most of you know who I am by now, he began. And I know I wasn't supposed to be here. Not as me. He paused, looked around, but I came here because I needed to remember who I was before the world told me who to be. And I met someone who reminded me that real life is messy and slow and uncurated. He looked at me, and then he reached into his coat and pulled out his phone. It had been locked away until now. He turned it on. A flood of notifications blinked to life. He tapped through to a live stream. Hi, he said to the camera. This is going to be my last post for a while, maybe forever. He looked at the group, then directly at me, because the realest thing I've found isn't on this screen, it's right here, in front of me. Then, without flinching, he opened the settings, tapped delete account, confirmed, and just like that, 1.3 million followers vanished. The room went silent, not shocked, not angry, just still, like something sacred had happened. And it had, because that was the moment KIO Tanaka, the influencer, the viral sensation, the mirror boy, disappeared. And he was born, the man I had loved all along. We spent our final days at the retreat in quiet joy. And no longer hiding, no longer performing, just being. The last night, as we packed, he held up one of my old sketches. It was him on that first day by the lake, alone, looking small against the trees. He smiled. Will you draw us now? He asked. I did. 2 silhouettes on a bench, hands brushing, hearts open. Offline, together. Life after the retreat was quieter than we expected, which was strange because when someone like Ko Tanaka deletes his entire online presence, the world doesn't just shrug. It reacts loudly, but we didn't hear any of it because we didn't go back to the city. We moved to a small coastal town 3 hours away. The kind of place where the ocean sings louder than cars and people still talk to each other instead of into their phones. We rented a tiny flat above an old bookshop that always smelled like cedar and second chances. The landlady, Mrs. Akar, thought we were just a quiet young couple starting fresh. She didn't recognize Ko, or maybe she did and decided it didn't matter. Either way, we were grateful. He didn't need fame anymore, and I didn't need to run. Ko spent the first month walking. Every morning, he'd wake up, lace his boots, and head to the beach with a thermos of black tea and no plan. He said it helped him feel human again. I understood. I painted again, real paintings this time. Not just sketches. I captured light through seafoam. Painted sunsets that looked like warm endings and uncertain beginnings. I sold a few in the tiny CAF gallery by the pew. For the first time in years, I felt like myself, not the girl who wrote that blog. Not the girl who ghosted a celebrity. Just era. We didn't talk about social media anymore. Not because it was a forbidden topic, but because it didn't matter. That life felt like another lifetime. Until the letter came. It was a rainy afternoon, the kind where the sky forgets what blue looks like and everything turns to mist. I found the envelope tucked under the door. No name. No return address. Just a logo in the corner, clean and corporate. I stared at it for a long time, then opened it. The letter was from a film production company. Big. Global. The kind that made blockbusters and documentaries and award-winning features, and they wanted to make a movie about Ko's story. They somehow knew everything. The anonymous blog post. The deleted account. The mountain retreat. The live-streamed goodbye. And most of all us. They said it was raw, authentic, a story the world needed right now. They offered him a CEO writing credit, creative control, a 7-figure deal, and a starring role. I read it twice. Then I placed it on the table and waited for him to come home. When he walked in, his hair was wet and his cheeks pink from the wind. He kissed me hello, shrugged off his jacket and noticed the envelope. He read it in silence. Then he set it down and looked at me. Well, he said, there it is. The algorithm found us again. I tried to smile. What do you think? He didn't answer right away. He poured us both tea, sat beside me and said, I thought this part of the story was just for us. There it was again. That tug-of-war between being known and being seen. Fame would spin our love into a narrative. Pretty, dramatized, maybe even inspirational. But it wouldn't be ours anymore. It would belong to strangers. Just like he once did. I took a breath. I don't want to be someone's lesson, I said. I just want to live. His gaze didn't waver. Me too. We didn't reply to the letter. We didn't need to. Instead, the next day, we wrote our own kind of story. We opened a tiny CAF, no Wi-Fi, no screens, no photos, just books, art, mismatched mugs, and warm pastries made by Mrs. Aiko's grandson, who had dreams of being a baker but dropped out of culinary school after 1 semester. We called it Same Moon, because even if the world was always changing, even if stories got twisted, and noise drowned out truth, the moon stayed silent, present, always watching, just like we did for each other. It wasn't easy. Some days were slow, Rainy. Customers were few. Other days, we had curious visitors drawn in by the no phone sign. And rumors of a CAF where a guy who looks a lot like that influencer made the best jasmine tea in town. But it was ours. Every crooked shelf, every chipped cup, every new regular who returned not for status, but for peace. One afternoon, I noticed K.O. doodling behind the counter. He had a little journal again filled with song lyrics, observations and poems about bread. I smiled. "Ah, you writing a new song?" He shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just remembering." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "You're more you than I've ever seen." He grinned. "That's because I'm not performing anymore." Then he added, "Except for you." We fell into rhythm. And in that rhythm, we bloomed, not viral, not visible to millions, but grounded, rooted, offline, and real. Until one evening, everything changed again. It started with a knock on the CAF door after closing. A woman in her 30s stood outside, tall, polished, camera ready. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her right away. Then she smiled. "I used to manage influencers," she said. "Now I make documentaries." She paused. "And I want to tell your story on your terms." I opened my mouth to decline, but K.O. held up a hand. "Wait," he said. "Let her speak." She sat with us for an hour, and something about her felt different. She wasn't there to exploit, or dramatize, or monetize love. She wanted to create something that reminded people to pause. Breathe. Stop scrolling. "I don't want to tell the story of an influencer who quit," she said. "I want to tell the story of a boy who got lost in noise and found his way home." K.O. looked at me, and I saw the same glint in his eyes that used to shine when we'd chat at AM before we even knew names. That hunger for truth. He turned to her. "I'll help you tell the story," he said. "But not as a comeback. And not for attention." "Then why?" she asked. He smiled. "For the ones who are still trapped in the noise." We agreed. Together. Write the script. To shape the truth. Share just enough, not everything, but enough. Enough to remind someone out there that they're allowed to leave the stage too. But we kept our CAF, our mornings, our walks, our moon, because the world could hear the story. But our love, that belonged offline. I found myself arriving at the campus library far earlier than needed. My fingers trembled slightly as I ran them along the spines of dusty old novels, trying to seem busy while waiting. My heart beat faster than usual, knowing that he would show up at any moment. The librarian gave me a knowing smile. "Waiting for someone?" I just smiled and nodded, and then he walked in, hood down, hair still damp from the spring drizzle, with that classic black notebook in his hand. He looked around, spotted me, and smiled. No butterflies. This time, it was more like a tidal wave crashing through my chest. We didn't say anything for a moment, just stood there eyeing each other in the quiet corners of the world that had somehow become just ours. "Come," I said softly, guiding him toward the farthest corner where no one came during this time of the day. We sat side by side, knees brushing, the silence between us not uncomfortable but electric. "I reread all your letters last night," I began, voice hushed. "I've never felt more seen in my life." His eyes softened. "And I read every one of yours over and over, even before I knew it was you." I blinked. You knew?" "Not immediately," he admitted. "But I had a guess. There was a gentleness, a kind of wonder in your words. And then that poem about the red umbrella." My breath caught. "You remembered?" "Of course." How could I forget that rainy day when I first saw you under it? I smiled at the memory. That was the day you looked right at me but didn't say a word. I was stupidly afraid, he confessed. Afraid that if I said something, the version of you I imagined would disappear. And yet, I whispered, here we are. He opened the black notebook. I want to show you something. There, scribbled across pages and pages, were entries, little stories, thoughts, fears, dreams, all about a girl with kind eyes and a curious heart. Me, I've been writing about you since the beginning, he said. Even before I knew it. Was you writing to me? I stared down at the words. Why didn't you ever say anything? He hesitated. Because I didn't feel like I deserved you. You were always this mystery I admired from a distance. I thought the letter writer was just another fantasy. But then your words, your soul, I couldn't hide behind distance anymore. A long pause. I didn't know what to say. Not immediately. All I could think of was the ache I had carried for months, the wondering, the wishing, the writing. And now he was here. Real. I was afraid to, I finally said. I kept hiding behind the letters because it was easier than believing someone like you would ever want someone like me. I leaned forward, his forehead gently resting against mine. We both wasted so much time hiding behind paper. And in that quiet library corner, surrounded by books filled with other people's stories, we started writing our own, this time, aloud. We didn't kiss, not yet. But our hands found each other, fingers intertwining. It was a start, a real one. One not built on fiction or anonymity, but on honesty, fragility, and the kind of vulnerability only love can demand. And for once, I didn't feel the urge to write it down, because I was living it, right then and there. After that day in the library, everything began to shift quietly, naturally, like spring nudging winter away. I didn't rush into a relationship. Instead, we chose to rediscover each other as ourselves. No hidden pens, no anonymous envelopes. Just us, stripped down to truth and trembling vulnerability. Our first real date wasn't candlelit or extravagant. It was a Saturday afternoon, and the clouds were threatening rain again. We walked along the riverside path near campus, our shoes scraping over the gravel, hands brushing now and then like the first time we'd met, but not daring to fully lock fingers just yet. I can't believe we've come this far, I murmured. Just a few weeks ago, you were still just ink and mystery. I chuckled. You were poetry and silence. I never imagined you'd be flesh and laugh lines. I laughed. Do I really have laugh lines? Yes, he said, teasing. And they're my favorite part of you. He stopped walking then, turned to face me. His expression changed, something serious, something scared and open all at once. I want to be honest about something. I braced myself. I used to write letters to forget how lonely I was, he said. To pretend that someone out there could understand the chaos in my head. But with you, I wasn't pretending. For the first time, I was writing to someone who really saw me. My heart throbbed. I know, I whispered. I wrote to escape too. But you made me want to stay, to feel everything. He took my hand then, properly this time, full fingers interlocked, like it was always meant to be. The sky cracked open above us, and rain began to pour just like the day we met. We didn't run. We stood there, soaking, shivering, laughing like children. He pulled out a tiny folded paper from his jacket, one that was somehow still dry. I wrote this before I knew it was you, he said. Before the library, before anything. I was going to burn it. But I think I want to read it now. My breath caught as he unfolded it. His voice was soft, barely louder than the rain. To the stranger I love without knowing, you remind me that silence can speak, and that hearts can find each other through nothing but the ache between words. If we ever meet, I hope I know how to look you in the eye without losing the courage your letters gave me. I stared at him. Then, without thinking, I leaned in and kissed him. It was gentle, like a question being answered, like a yes whispered. Under an umbrella of clouds, when we pulled apart, he smiled through dripping hair. You didn't lose your courage, I whispered. You gave me mine. We sat beneath the little bridge nearby, sheltered, soaked and wordless. My head rested on his shoulder. The city noise faded, and for once, even our thoughts seemed to still. I'm glad we wrote to each other before we ever spoke, I said quietly. It made me fall for your soul first, and now, he asked, tilting his head toward me. Now I smiled. I get to fall for the rest of you. The rain kept falling, but we didn't move. Not because we didn't have places to go, but because we had finally found where we belonged. In words. In rain. In each other. When I began officially dating, it didn't feel like a grand beginning. It felt like a continuation, as if the universe had flipped to the next chapter. In a book we'd been writing all along, everything was soft and real. Our love was steady, not the kind that came crashing in like a storm, but the kind that held your hand during one. He started walking me to class every morning, not because he had to, but because he said he liked the way I looked when the sun hit my cheek. I started carrying mints in my bag. He hated the taste of gum, and I liked kissing him without distractions. We had inside jokes that were born from the letters and blossomed in real life. He'd call me stranger in mock seriousness whenever I was being particularly quiet. I'd tease him by saying he'd peaked as an anonymous poet, but not everything was perfect. No love story is, not even ours. The first real crack came one evening when we ran into Isla. Yes, the Isla the girl RE had once thought he loved. It was at an open mic night downtown. IE and I were standing near the back, sipping lukewarm cocoa, when she stepped onto the stage and began reciting one of his poems, one of the letters he had sent anonymously to the wall, never knowing who might find them. I felt IE freeze beside me. That's mine, he whispered. My stomach turned. The poem ended, and Isla stepped off the stage, glowing with the satisfaction of stolen applause. IE approached her gently. I'm glad my words found you, he said. But that was my letter. It wasn't meant to be shared like that. Isla blinked, caught off guard. I didn't know it was yours. Yes, you did, I said softly. You replied once. You even signed it. Isla. She paused. I thought it was just for anyone who needed it. The wall doesn't have rules. No, I agreed. But it has intentions. There was an awkward silence before she mumbled an apology and left, and we didn't stay long after that. We walked back to RA's apartment in silence. The night felt heavy, the stars unusually distant. Inside, he sat on the edge of the couch, staring at his hands. I used to love her, you know, he said, not looking at me. Back before the letters, I thought she was everything I ever wanted. I nodded slowly. And now, he looked up at me, eyes raw and honest. Now I see that sometimes we fall for the idea of someone not who they are, but what we want them to be. I sat next to him, pressing my shoulder to his. And me? Am I an idea too? He turned, cupped my face gently. You're not an idea. You're the one I almost missed while chasing the wrong dream. Tears welled in my eyes, but they didn't fall. I think I whispered. We both almost missed each other. He kissed my forehead, and for a long while we didn't speak. We didn't need to, because the air between us no longer held confusion, it held clarity. Later that week, I found a new note tucked into the back pocket of my denim jacket. In R.E.'s now familiar scrawl, it read, "To the girl who saved me from ghosts, I would choose you over mystery, over memory, in every version of every life. And I will write to you every day, even if we sleep side by side." I pressed the note to my chest, because that was the thing about R.E. Even in silence, he always knew what to say, and just like that, it all changed again. The sound of his voice calling my name, Eloy, had become different. No longer mechanical. No longer rehearsed. It was filled with something raw, something uncertain, almost tender. We sat by the edge of the old botanical garden, the one where we used to spend hours before his accident. The place had become a ghost of itself, overgrown, quiet, yet painfully familiar. He looked at me with the smallest trace of wonder. "Why do I feel like I know you better than I know myself?" I tried not to tremble. "Maybe you do," I whispered. For days now, we had begun a strange rhythm. Damon had started messaging me on his own. He asked to meet without therapy or schedule. He'd shared dreams, fragments of memories, he said. People he couldn't name. Emotions he couldn't place. One night, he confessed, "There's this recurring image in my sleep of a girl with stars in her eyes standing on a rooftop in the rain." My heart clenched. That was me. That was us. Our first kiss. That moment only we shared. "Damon, that girl, I think it's you, isn't it?" Silence blanketed us. Time slowed. He didn't push. He didn't ask for validation. He simply placed a hand between us on the bench, open, waiting. I placed mine in his. It was the first time since the accident that he touched me with intention. Not from duty, not from confusion, but from instinct. Later that week, Dr. Harrow pulled me aside. "He's showing signs of emotional memory return. Not explicit facts, but sensory associations. Smells, sounds, impressions tied to emotions." I nodded, tears stinging. "Is that good?" "It's incredible. Rare. But it also means I finished for her. It means he may be falling in love with me all over again, without knowing he already had once." The emotional toll was starting to wear on me. Night, I would rewatch old videos, him singing to me in the kitchen, teasing me on lazy Sundays. He had been so alive, so certain in his love. And now, he was relearning how to feel that love. Step by hesitant step. One afternoon, something shifted again. We were in the university courtyard, sitting on the lawn. He was sketching absently, drawing geometric lines on his notebook. I watched as the lines curved into something familiar. "A bracelet. The same one I used to wear. I keep seeing this in my head," he muttered. "What is it?" I held my breath. "It's something you gave me on our anniversary." He blinked. I nodded, too choked to say more. His pencil dropped. He leaned forward, brow furrowed, as though wrestling with something painful. I dreamed of you crying," he said suddenly. "And I hated myself in that dream. Why would I do that to you?" The air cracked like lightning. He was remembering the breakup. Or maybe something deeper. A shadow of guilt, of regret. And then he asked, "Did I hurt you before?" I could have lied, said nothing. But this was the moment we had worked toward. "Yes, you left me. Before the accident, you were drifting away. But you didn't mean to." And then everything reset. He closed his eyes. God, why do I feel like I'm breaking apart? Over the next few days, the storm inside him only grew stronger. He withdrew again, skipping sessions. His mother called, worried. His stepfather tried to intervene, but Damon locked himself in his apartment. When I finally confronted him storming up the stairs to his building, he looked at me like a man drowning. I can't trust what's real anymore, he whispered. Every time I think I'm making progress, I see something in my dreams as arguing, you walking away, me begging you to stay. But then it vanishes like fog. I stepped forward, heart in my throat. What do you want to know, Damon? Ask me anything. He shook his head. I don't want to know anymore. I want to feel. I want it to be mine again. Not yours. Not the past. I want to choose you without someone telling me I already did. My breath caught. That was the Damon I knew. He wasn't asking for the old map. He wanted to draw a new one. Days turned into weeks. We spent hours together, not recounting, not correcting, just existing, rebuilding. He began painting again. In one piece, he painted a skyline with two figures in silhouette. I knew it instantly, our rooftop, our memory, except this time, both figures were reaching toward one another. And that's when he handed me something, a bracelet, handmade, just like the one before. This feels right, he said. I took it. Maybe he didn't remember the past, but this was a beginning, and sometimes that's even more powerful. I didn't expect his message to make me cry, but it did. When you disappeared, it felt like the pages of my life lost their ink. You're the plot twist I was too blind to see coming. Come back to me, Lila. Let me read our story again with both of us holding the pen. I had read it a dozen times now, his words etched in my chest like the love letters I never got to send. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I packed a suitcase, because sometimes healing doesn't come from forgetting, it comes from returning, from facing what you left behind and rewriting it into something new. I boarded a train back to Halvin. The city hadn't changed much, but I had. I wore my quiet confidence like armor, with my manuscript in my bag and my heart cautiously open. The bookshop stood like a stubborn memory, ivy still climbing its bricks, the chime above the door still broken. I stepped inside, and there he was, Jace. Not reading, not working, just standing, like he'd been waiting. His eyes widened, breath caught. Lila, I nodded. I didn't know if you'd ever come back. Neither did I. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full of longing, of regret, of love unspoken and memories too loud to ignore. He stepped forward. Can I show you something? He led me to the back room. On the wall were pinned notes, handwritten thoughts, story fragments, memories. Dozens of them. Lila liked her coffee too sweet. She used to hum off-key when she was writing. If I could go back, I'd never take a single day with her for granted. My knees went weak. He looked at me, voice trembling. I wrote down everything I never said. I didn't know how else to keep you alive here. And for the first time in months, I stepped closer, placed my palm on his chest. You don't have to keep me alive in memories anymore, Jace. I'm here. He kissed me then, slowly, like he was afraid I might disappear again. And I kissed him back, like I was writing the final sentence to a story we both thought was lost. But it wasn't the end. I too was just the next chapter. The city lights flickered softly as Jace and I stepped onto the old rooftop, the place where we first met and where countless memories had been penned in silence and stolen glances. He held my hand tightly, his thumb tracing gentle circles over my knuckles, a silent promise, a new beginning. I used to think love was about grand gestures and perfect timing, he whispered, voice trembling. But I've learned it's about showing up. Even when it's messy. Even when it's scary. I smiled, warmth blooming in my chest. It's about writing the story together, even if the pages get smudged. He pulled me close, forehead resting against mine. You're my favorite chapter, Lila. And I want to keep writing with you. No more secrets. No more margins filled with more IFS. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and fresh beginnings. Around us, the city hummed a backdrop to our shared moment of clarity. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling the steady beat of his heart matching mine. Let's promise, I said softly, to keep choosing each other. Every day. In words. In silence, in everything. He nodded, a tear escaping down his cheek. I promise. As the first drops of rain began to fall, we didn't move, because some stories don't need an ending. They just need two people brave enough to write them. Together, one imperfect, beautiful page at a time. Thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until the next time, goodbye.